Many of you have asked me if you move to another country, if you have to give up your U.S. citizenship. And until now, that hasn't been the case. You can live in another country and get permanent residency, or you can acquire another citizenship without giving up your U.S. citizenship. But all of that might change because a senator from Ohio has proposed a bill to make it illegal for U.S. citizens to hold more than one citizenship. This means that upwards of 40 million Americans could have to give up a citizenship that they have from another country or force renouncing their U.S. citizenship. Now, a lot of you have sent me messages about this new bill, and I've seen a lot of videos about it. I have a slightly different perspective, so I'm going to go through what's really happening here, some of the reasons that I think that this bill was proposed, and if it has any realistic chance of getting through. If we're just meeting for the first time, I'm Kristin. I've been helping people move abroad for the last 20 years, and I've been living and working in upwards of 65 countries since I was 20 years old. Well, I'm not going to mention the senator who proposed this bill because I personally think that he is doing it to get attention. So we'll leave him anonymous, but this bill is to establish that U.S. citizens shall have sole and exclusive allegiance to the United States, and that the purpose of the bill is to protect the integrity of national citizenship, preserve allegiance to the United States, and also it mentions that it's in the national interest of the United States to ensure that U.S. citizenship is held exclusively, and that U.S. citizens with foreign citizenship could create conflicts of interest of divided loyalties. So I think that the whole premise and the purpose of this bill is invalid because the United States is a relatively young country. It's a country that is based on immigrants. It was founded on immigrants, and it's a very diverse country. And that's one of the things that makes the U.S. so great. The notion that a couple 100 million people cannot pledge allegiance to our country if we hold citizenship from another country, it just doesn't even make sense. I mean, my grandparents' family immigrated to the U.S. from Europe, and I do believe that they renounced their citizenship eventually, but there's no conflict of interest if I decide to go get citizenship from Italy or Hungary or Romania. I think that what this bill will do is actually create more division because you're forcing U.S. citizens to choose between the U.S. and another country. And I've always said on this channel for the past 8 years that I never would want to give up my U.S. citizenship, even though I love to travel and I love to spend time in other countries, because, I still love my country. My family lives here. There would be no reason for me personally to give up my citizenship, but I think if I was forced into it and I had another passport, then I would strongly consider it. There could be upwards of 40 million U.S. citizens that hold dual citizenship. So if 40 million people are forced to make that decision, first of all, it would be an administrative nightmare. And second of all, it would just be impractical. And then it would cost the U.S. a lot of money. So let's say that half of the 40 million people were forced to renounce their U.S. citizenship, or as it says here, within a year, if they didn't give up their citizenship, then it would expire and it'd be automatic if they held citizenship in another country. We're not going to get into how they would even track that since there's no current existing system to tell how many Americans are living abroad and how many people hold dual citizenship, because it's never actually been an issue. It's never been a risk to this country. But if they did, it would just create a huge administrative backlog of millions of people that need to renounce their citizenship within the next year, or who decide to do that. And then all of those people, upon renouncing their citizenship, would no longer have to pay taxes to the United States. I talked about this recently in a call with my relocation clients, and everyone had a different perspective, and they were bringing in news articles that they found and videos, and we were talking about this. And a lot of my clients and we decided that this would be very unlikely, because if you have even 1 million people give up their U.S. citizenship, that means that they will have to pay a fee to renounce and they pay an exit tax, but they would no longer be beholden to the United States when it comes to paying taxes in the future. If we look at the current numbers, only 5,000 people renounced their citizenship in the last year. So this bill would actually encourage people and incentivize more people to renounce their citizenship. So when we look at the numbers of people that renounce their citizenship, which is usually for tax reasons, it's anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000 people per year. And according to one article, it says that the capacity of the government currently to process these applications is about 5,000 people per year, and that there's a waiting list of 30,000 people who want to voluntarily renounce their citizenship right now. So I think that having potentially millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people renouncing their citizenship essentially overnight would just be an administrative disaster, and it would reduce the amount of tax revenue that the U.S. government would receive in the future. There's also constitutional precedent from a case that says citizenship cannot be taken away without an individual's voluntary intentional act, and that Congress cannot redefine intent through deadlines. This type of bill would directly contradict those rulings. Now, we've seen decisions get overturned, so there is a possibility of that. But if the United States is about freedom, one of those freedoms should be the ability to hold citizenship in multiple countries, because as far as I know, this hasn't been an issue at any time before. There's also millions of U.S. citizens who are born in different countries around the world who have never even been to the United States. And they would also be forced to choose between a country that they hold a passport to that they've never been to, but they still have to pay and file taxes to, or living in their home country. So imagine if you were born in Spain to U.S. parents and you've never been to the U.S., but you have dual citizenship. If this bill was enacted, then you'd have to decide between holding the passport of the country that you were born in and live in, or deciding to renounce your Spanish citizenship to go become a U.S. citizen. Once we get through all of that, we look at the political support for this bill. And there's currently a legislative forecasting model that puts the probability of passing this bill at about 3%. So it looks like there's not a lot of bipartisan support for this, possibly because a lot of people in the U.S. government might hold dual citizenship themselves. It shows here that Melania Trump and her son Barron also hold Slovenian citizenship in addition to U.S. citizenship. So perhaps if many politicians and the president are individually affected by a bill like this, this would reduce their motivation to pass something like this as well. But that doesn't mean that we should relax about this bill, because what worries me, even though it's a completely nonsensical bill that I think was proposed for individual interest, it doesn't benefit the American people or the U.S. in any tangible way that I can see. But the issue here is that if this does get taken seriously, some version of this bill could be passed someday, or it could set a precedent for another version of it to be passed. Maybe that's not retroactive. Maybe that people that already have dual citizenship could be grandfathered in, and new people who want to get citizenship wouldn't be able to. And so I don't think it's something that we should, not worry about. It's definitely something to take seriously, and crazier things have happened in U.S. law. But I think that it's a shame that somebody would try to negatively affect tens of millions of Americans living in the U.S. and abroad just for their own, apparent personal interests and personal gain and personal opinion, just because he decided to renounce his citizenship when he moved to the U.S. If this type of bill does get passed, what does this mean for you? Well, if you would like to go live in another country someday and become a naturalized citizen of that country, which could take 5 years or 10 years, or if you buy a passport in another country, such as like a golden passport, then you would need to make that decision of whether or not you want to keep your U.S. citizenship And if you do want to travel back to the US for family reasons, for personal reasons, for leisure, or if you decide, okay, I want to live in another country for 10 years and then I want to move back to my home country and retire there and live there the rest of your years, you wouldn't be able to. So this, can affect so many people in so many negative ways. It could affect, your ability to work in different countries, could affect property rights. It could affect your pension and savings. If you qualify for a pension in multiple countries, if you'll ever be able to receive that in the future. Also, if you renounce your citizenship, then not only do you not have to pay taxes, but you can't vote. And you have to get a visa to come back to the US in the future. So this is really serious stuff. So polling shows here that only a third of US citizens support the idea that US citizens should have to give up citizenship in other countries, and about half don't think that naturalized citizens should have to give up their citizenship. So I think the most important thing to do here is to make your voice heard, to contact your local representatives, and just ensure that they know that you do not support this type of bill. I think that if it's unanimously condemned and shut down by the majority of people, then hopefully we can kill this bill. But it's still very disturbing that this type of thing would be proposed. So I personally am going to continue with my plan to get a second passport through Ancestry in Romania. And I'm sure many of you watching either know someone or possibly yourself could qualify for a citizenship by descent from a different country, especially in Europe. Many of my clients qualify for a passport through Italy or Ireland. For me, it's Romania and Hungary. And I think that's a really important part of anyone's cultural identity, is to be able to reconnect with those countries that your ancestors came from, even if they moved from abroad to the US to give you more opportunities and a better life. Things come full circle, and things have changed a lot in the past 100 years. So you wouldn't be alone if you wanted to go back to where your ancestors came from to reconnect with your culture and be able to live a better quality of life somewhere else that's not available, or that's only available at a much higher cost in the United States. So I would love to know what you think about this bill in the comments below. Let's make sure that our voices are heard. And thank you to everyone who's reached out to me to make a video on this topic. Ciao from Spain.